The first warning came from a telescope station on the dark side of the moon. Dr. James Okonkwo was reviewing data from the night shift when his screen flickered and displayed something that made his coffee cup slip from his fingers. It shattered on the floor, but he did not notice. His eyes were fixed on the readings, and his hands began to shake. A massive energy wave was moving through space. It was larger than anything humans had ever detected. The wave stretched across millions of kilometers, and it was heading directly toward Earth. According to his calculations, it would arrive in 72 hours. James grabbed his phone and called the United Nations Space Defense Council. Within the hour, leaders from every nation were gathering in emergency sessions. Scientists around the world abandoned their projects and focused on this new threat. The cosmic storm, as the media quickly named it, became the only topic of conversation on every continent. Commander Elena Vasquez was eating breakfast in her small apartment in Houston when her phone rang. She was a retired astronaut, 53 years old, with gray streaks in her dark hair and scars on her hands from decades of spacewalks. She had flown 7 missions and had helped build the first permanent lunar base. Now she spent her days teaching young astronauts and tending to her garden. "Elena, we need you," said General Marcus Webb on the phone. His voice was tight with tension. "Something is coming, something big. We need the best we have." Elena listened as the general explained the situation. When he finished, she was already packing her bag. At the United Nations headquarters in New York, the atmosphere was chaotic. Representatives argued in dozens of languages. Some demanded immediate evacuation of coastal cities. Others wanted to launch nuclear weapons at the approaching storm. A few religious leaders declared it was the end of the world and that nothing could be done. Dr. Chen Wei, the lead scientist from the Chinese Space Agency, presented the findings to the assembly. She was calm despite the fear in the room. Her laser pointer moved across a massive screen showing the cosmic storm's path. "This is not a normal phenomenon," she explained. "The energy reading suggested is partly natural and partly artificial. Someone or something created this storm and aimed it at our planet. If it hits Earth directly, the electromagnetic pulse will destroy all technology on the surface. Every power grid, every computer, every vehicle will stop working. Without electricity, water treatment plants will fail. Hospitals will go dark. Food storage facilities will shut down. Within months, most of humanity will die." The room erupted in panic. Politicians shouted at each other. Some wept openly. Others sat in stunned silence. But Elena Vasquez was not at the United Nations. She was already at Cape Canaveral, walking toward a hangar that held Earth's newest and most advanced spacecraft. It was called the Phoenix, and it had been built in secret over the past 10 years. The ship was designed for deep space exploration, but today it would serve a different purpose. The Phoenix could fly faster than any human vessel ever created. Its fusion engine could push it to 10% of the speed of light. More importantly, it carried an experimental device called the resonance shield, which could theoretically deflect or absorb massive amounts of energy. Elena met her crew in the briefing room. There were 5 of them in total. Lieutenant Commander David Park was the pilot, a young Korean-American man with steady hands and a brilliant mind for navigation. Dr. Amara Osai was the engineer, a Nigerian woman who had designed the Phoenix's engine herself. Specialist Viktor Petrov was the weapons officer, a massive Russian man with a gentle smile and eyes like ice. Dr. Lisa Montgomery was the medical officer, a Canadian woman who had saved lives on 3 different space stations. And finally, there was James Okonkwo himself, the astronomer who had first detected the storm. "I know this is sudden," Elena told them. "I know you all have families, lives, plans for the future, but right now you are the only hope Earth has. We will fly to meet the storm. We will use the resonance shield to break it apart or redirect it, and then we will come home." David raised his hand. "Commander, the calculations show that even with the resonance shield, There is only a 30% chance of success, and if we fail, we die. Alina nodded. I know the odds, but 30% is better than zero. If we do nothing, everyone dies. If we try, some of us might live, all of us might die, but at least we will die fighting for something that matters. The crew looked at each other. There was fear in their eyes, but there was also determination. One by one, they nodded. Amara spoke first. My grandmother used to say that heroes are not people without fear. Heroes are people who are afraid but act anyway. I am afraid, Commander, but I am ready. Victor crossed his arms over his broad chest. In Russia, we have a saying, a man who has never faced death has never truly lived. I have faced death many times. This is just one more. Lisa smiled softly. I became a doctor to save lives. If I can save 8 billion lives by risking my own, that seems like a fair trade. James adjusted his glasses nervously. I found this thing. I feel responsible for it somehow. I need to see this through to the end. David was the last to speak. He was silent for a long moment, staring at the table. Then he looked up at Alina with steady eyes. My daughter is 3 years old. She does not understand what is happening. She just knows that Daddy has to go on a trip. When I come back, I want to tell her that I helped save the world. Let's do this. Alina felt a warmth spread through her chest. She had led many crews before, but never one like this. These were not just astronauts. They were heroes. The launch was scheduled for 6 hours later. In that time, the crew said goodbye to their families. Alina called her sister in Spain and told her she loved her. David held his daughter until the last possible moment. Amara prayed with her mother over video call. Victor drank vodka with his father, both of them pretending they were not crying. Lisa wrote letters to everyone she had ever loved and sealed them in envelopes with instructions to deliver them only if she did not return. James simply stood on the beach near the launch site and watched the waves, thinking about how beautiful Earth was and how much he wanted to protect it. Then it was time. The crew boarded the Phoenix. The ship hummed with power as Amara brought the fusion engine online. David ran through the pre-flight checklist with mechanical precision. Victor armed the defensive systems. Lisa prepared the medical bay for potential emergencies. James loaded the navigation data that would guide them to the cosmic storm. Alina took her seat in the commander's chair and looked out through the forward window. The sky was blue and clear. She could see palm trees swaying in the wind and seabirds circling over the water. It was a perfect day on Earth, and she intended to make sure there would be many more. Phoenix, this is Mission Control, said a voice through the radio. You are cleared for launch. Good luck and Godspeed. Alina pressed the button that activated the ship's communication system. Mission Control, this is Phoenix. We are ready. Beginning launch sequence now. The engines roared to life. The ship trembled as power built in its core. Alina felt the familiar pressure of acceleration pushing her back into her seat. Through the window, she watched the ground fall away. The sky changed from blue to purple to black as they left the atmosphere behind. Earth shrank below them, becoming a small blue marble in the vast darkness of space. Alina looked at it and made a silent promise. She would not let that beautiful world die. She would fight the storm with everything she had, and she would win. The Phoenix accelerated into the void, heading toward destiny. Behind them, 8 billion people waited and hoped. 48 hours remained until the storm arrived. The Phoenix raced through the solar system faster than any ship had ever traveled before. Stars blurred past the windows as the fusion engine pushed them toward their destination. Inside the vessel, the crew worked without rest, preparing for the confrontation ahead. Dr. Amara Osai spent most of her time in the engine room, making adjustments to the resonance shield. The device was based on theoretical physics that had never been tested in real conditions. It was supposed to create a field of counter-resonating energy that would break apart or redirect massive waves of electromagnetic force. But theory and reality were very different things. The math works, Amara muttered to herself as she reviewed the calculations for the 100th time. The simulations work, but space does not care about math or simulations. Commander Elena Vasquez floated into the engine room and anchored herself next to Amara. "How are you holding up?" Amara sighed and rubbed her tired eyes. "I keep thinking about my mother. She told me not to come on this mission. She said the world needed engineers to rebuild after the storm passes, not heroes to die fighting it. I told her I had to go. Now I wonder if she was right." Elena placed a hand on Amara's shoulder. "There would be nothing left to rebuild if we fail. Your mother knows that. She is afraid for you, but she is also proud of you. I am certain of that." Amara nodded slowly. "I hope so, I really hope so." Meanwhile, Lieutenant Commander David Park was in the cockpit, running navigation calculations. The cosmic storm was not moving in a straight line. It was spiraling slowly, like a hurricane made of pure energy. To reach the center where the storm was weakest, they would have to fly through the outer bands, which were the most dangerous. James Okonkwo floated beside David, studying the data on the storm's structure. The more he analyzed it, the more convinced he became that this was not a natural phenomenon. "Look at these patterns," James said, pointing at his screen. "The energy distribution is too regular. There are repeating sequences in the radiation bursts. This is not random. Someone designed this." David frowned. "Are you saying aliens built this storm?" "I am saying that something intelligent created it. Whether that something is biological or mechanical, I cannot say. But this storm was built as a weapon, and it was aimed at Earth." The implications were terrifying. Somewhere in the universe, there was an intelligence powerful enough to create cosmic weapons and hostile enough to use them against humanity. Even if they survived this storm, there might be more to come. Elena had gathered the crew in the main cabin to share this information. The mood was somber but not hopeless. Fear was a natural response to danger, but these people were trained to function despite their fear. "We cannot worry about future threats right now," Elena said firmly. "First, we survive today, then we prepare for tomorrow, one crisis at a time." Viktor Petrov nodded in agreement. "In combat, you focus on the enemy in front of you. If you think about the enemy behind you, you die. Simple." Lisa Montgomery was checking the medical supplies one more time. "Whatever created this storm, they underestimated us. Humans have survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and countless other disasters. We are harder to kill than anyone expects." James smiled despite his anxiety. "That is true. Humans are surprisingly stubborn about staying alive." The hours passed. The crew alternated between working and resting, though rest was difficult when certain death waited ahead. Elena found herself unable to sleep, so she floated to the observation dome at the top of the ship and looked out at the stars. The cosmic storm was visible now. It filled a quarter of the sky, a swirling mass of purple and gold light that was terrifyingly beautiful. Lightning crackled between the energy bands, and pulses of radiation flashed like heartbeats. It looked alive, like a creature rather than a weather phenomenon. Elena watched the storm approach and thought about her life. She had accomplished many things. She had walked on the moon. She had helped establish humanity's first permanent presence in space. She had trained a generation of astronauts who would explore the solar system. But this mission was different. This was not about exploration or discovery. This was about survival. 24 hours until impact. David called everyone to the cockpit. "We are entering the outer bands in 6 hours. I have calculated a path that should take us through the weakest sections, but it will still be rough. The radiation levels will be extreme. The turbulence will be unlike anything we have ever experienced. And if we lose engine power inside the storm, we will not be able to escape." Amara nodded. "The shields can protect us from radiation for approximately 2 hours. After that, the exposure will become lethal. We need to reach the center and activate the resonance shield before our time runs out. Victor was checking his console. I am preparing the emergency systems. If something breaks, I will fix it. If something attacks us, I will shoot it. Simple. Lisa was handing out medication that would help protect against radiation sickness. Take these now and again in 4 hours. They will not prevent damage entirely, but they will give us more time. James was reviewing the data one more time. The center of the storm appears to be hollow. There is a zone of relative calm approximately 50 kilometers across. If we can reach that zone, we should be able to deploy the resonance shield safely. Alina listened to her crew and felt a surge of pride. These people were facing impossible odds, but they were not giving up. They were problem-solving, preparing, fighting. This was what made humans special, not their strength or their intelligence, but their refusal to accept defeat. "All right," Alina said. "We all know what we need to do. Get some rest while you can. In 6 hours we fight." The crew dispersed to their stations. Alina remained in the cockpit, staring at the storm. It was growing larger every minute, filling more and more of the sky. She could feel its power even through the ship's hull, a vibration that seemed to resonate in her bones. She thought about Earth. Right now, billions of people were watching the sky, waiting for news. Children were asking their parents why everyone looked so scared. Workers were going through the motions of their jobs while their minds were elsewhere. Religious leaders were holding services in packed churches, mosques, temples, and synagogues. Scientists were working frantically on backup plans that might not matter. Politicians were making speeches about unity and hope, even as they built private bunkers for themselves. Alina had never felt the weight of responsibility so heavily. She was carrying the hopes of an entire species on her shoulders. If she failed, everything humanity had ever built, every painting, every song, every story, every dream would be lost forever. But if she succeeded, humanity would have a future. Children would grow up and have children of their own. Scientists would make new discoveries. Artists would create new masterpieces. Humanity would spread across the stars and become something greater than anyone could imagine. That future was worth fighting for. That future was worth dying for. Alina closed her eyes and whispered a prayer to whatever forces might be listening. Then she opened her eyes and prepared for the battle ahead. 6 hours later, the Phoenix entered the cosmic storm. The transition was violent. One moment they were flying through empty space. The next moment they were surrounded by chaos. Energy waves battered the ship from all directions. Lightning arced across the hull, overloading sensors and causing alarms to blare. The vessel shook so hard that Alina could barely keep her grip on her chair. "Shields holding," Victor shouted over the noise, "but we are taking damage." David's hands flew across the controls, adjusting their course constantly to avoid the worst of the turbulence. "I am trying to find a stable path, but the storm keeps shifting. The currents are unpredictable." Amara was monitoring the engine systems. "Power fluctuations in the reactor. If this continues, we could lose thrust." Lisa was strapped into her chair, her face pale but determined. "Radiation levels are climbing. We have less time than we thought." James was watching his instruments with wide eyes. "The energy patterns are changing. I think the storm is responding to our presence. It is trying to push us out." Alina gritted her teeth and made a decision. "Full power to engines. We push through no matter what. We are not turning back." The Phoenix surged forward, its fusion engine blazing like a second sun. The ship dove deeper into the storm, fighting against currents of energy that tried to tear it apart. The crew held on and prayed. 12 hours remained until the storm would reach Earth. But first, they had to survive. The cosmic storm raged around the Phoenix like a monster trying to devour it. Alina could feel the ship groaning under the stress, metal and composites straining against forces they were never designed to endure. Warning lights flashed across every console. and alarms screamed in overlapping patterns that made it impossible to identify individual problems. "Hull breach in Section 7, Victor reported, his voice somehow steady despite the chaos. "I am sealing it now." Alina watched him work. The big Russian moved with surprising grace in zero gravity, his hands flying across controls and pulling manual override levers. Within seconds, the breach was contained, but they had lost a storage compartment and all the supplies inside it. "How much air did we lose?" Alina asked. 12% of reserves, Victor replied. "We have enough to complete the mission, but there is no margin for error." David was fighting with the helm, trying to keep them on course. The storm currents were like nothing he had ever experienced. They shifted constantly, sometimes pushing the ship one direction, sometimes pulling it in another. It was like trying to steer through a river made of fire. "I need more power to thrusters," David shouted. "I cannot maintain our heading." Amara's voice came through the intercom from the engine room. "I can give you 10% more, but I will have to take it from life support. We will have less heat and less oxygen." Alina did not hesitate. "Do it. We can survive cold and thin air. We cannot survive crashing into an energy wall." The extra power flowed to the thrusters, and David wrestled the ship back onto course. But the adjustment had consequences. The temperature inside the cabin began to drop immediately, and everyone's breathing became slightly more difficult. Lisa was monitoring the crew's vital signs from her medical station. Heart rates are elevated. Stress hormones are through the roof. James is showing early signs of radiation exposure. I am administering additional medication. James barely noticed the injection. He was focused entirely on his instruments, tracking the storm's behavior. The more he observed, the more certain he became that this was not just a weapon. It was a test. "Commander," he said, "I am detecting something strange. The storm is not just attacking us randomly. It is probing us. It sends a wave, we respond, and then it adjusts its next attack based on our response. It is learning." Alina's blood ran cold. "You are saying the storm is intelligent, or controlled by something intelligent. There is a signal buried in the energy patterns. It is too complex for me to decode, but it is definitely communication of some kind. Something is watching us and testing our capabilities." Victor growled, "If something is watching, let them watch. Let them see what humans can do." The crew pushed deeper into the storm. The comm center was still 30 kilometers away, but it felt like 100. Every meter of progress was a victory won against impossible odds. Then disaster struck. A massive energy tendril, larger than any they had encountered before, swept across their path. David saw it coming and tried to dodge, but the ship was too slow. The tendril hit them broadside, sending the Phoenix spinning out of control. Alina was thrown from her chair. She crashed into a wall, pain exploding through her shoulder. Around her, she could hear her crew screaming as they were thrown around the cabin. "Everyone report," Alina shouted when the spinning finally slowed. "I am here," David called out. "Minor injuries, controls are responding." "Alive," Victor added, "but weapon systems are offline." "Medical bay is a mess, but I am functional," Lisa said. "Engine room is damaged." Amara's voice was strained. "We have a fire, I am trying to contain it." "James," Alina called. "James, report." There was no response. Lisa pushed herself toward the observation section where James had been stationed. Alina followed, ignoring the pain in her shoulder. They found James floating unconscious, blood seeping from a gash on his forehead. He had been thrown against his console and was not moving. Lisa immediately began first aid. "He is alive, but he has a concussion and possible internal injuries. I need to get him to the medical bay." Alina helped her carry James through the chaotic ship. Behind them, Victor and David fought to restore control. In the engine room, Amara was battling a fire with extinguishers while simultaneously trying to repair critical systems. As Lisa worked on James, Alina returned to the cockpit. The situation was grim. The energy tendril had damaged their primary navigation array. They could still fly, but their ability to detect and avoid hazards was severely compromised. "We are flying blind," David said quietly. "I can see the storm with my eyes, but the instruments that tell me where the safe paths are, those are gone." Alina stared out at the swirling chaos around them. The center of the storm was still visible, a distant calm eye in the hurricane of destruction. They were so close, but reaching it now seemed impossible. "We do not need instruments," Alina said slowly. "We have something better. We have human instincts." David looked at her uncertainly. "Commander, humans have been navigating by instinct for thousands of years. We sailed oceans without GPS. We crossed deserts without maps. We found our way home using nothing but the stars and our own senses. The machines are broken, but we are not." She moved to the co-pilot seat and strapped herself in. "I will watch the storm with my eyes. I will look for patterns in the way it moves. You fly where I tell you to fly. We do this together the old-fashioned way." David nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. "Like ancient sailors." "Exactly like ancient sailors. Now let us show this storm what humanity is made of." They flew through the chaos with nothing but their eyes and their instincts. Alina watched the energy currents and learned their rhythms. She began to predict where the next wave would come from, where the next tendril would strike. She shouted directions to David, and he followed them without hesitation. "Left, right, up, dive." The Phoenix danced through the storm like a living thing. It was not graceful, but it was effective. They took hits, they accumulated damage, but they kept moving forward. Meter by meter, kilometer by kilometer, they closed the distance to the calm center. In the medical bay, James woke up. His head was pounding and his vision was blurry, but he was alive. Lisa had done excellent work stabilizing him. "What is happening?" he asked weakly. "We are almost there," Lisa told him. "Just rest. The commander has everything under control." James tried to sit up but could not. His body was too weak, but his mind was still working. Even in his damaged state, he was thinking about the storm, about the signal he had detected, about what it all meant. In the engine room, Amara had finally contained the fire, but the damage was extensive. The fusion reactor was running at only 60% capacity. The resonance shield generator had taken a hit and was showing warning signs that it might not function properly. "Commander," Amara reported over the intercom, "I have bad news. The resonance shield may not be able to generate a full field. I might be able to give you 70% power, maybe 80 if I am lucky, but a full deployment is not possible." Alina received this news while guiding David through another close call. Her mind raced. 70% might not be enough to break the storm. It might not be enough to save Earth, but it was all they had. "Do your best, Amara. That is all any of us can do." They were 5 kilometers from the center when Victor shouted a warning. "Contact! Something is approaching." Alina looked and saw it. Emerging from the storm walls was a shape, something solid and metallic and clearly artificial. It was a machine of some kind, a drone or a probe, and it was heading straight for them. "It is trying to stop us," James said over the intercom. He had managed to drag himself to a working console. "The intelligence controlling the storm has sent a guardian. It does not want us to reach the center." The machine was fast. It closed the distance before David could evade. Instead of attacking with weapons, it attached itself to the hull. Alina felt the impact reverberate through the ship. "It is drilling into our hull," Victor reported. "I think it is trying to board us." Alina made a decision in an instant. "Victor with me, everyone else keep us moving. We cannot stop now." She grabbed a fire extinguisher as a makeshift weapon and pushed herself toward the section where the machine was breaching. Victor followed with a maintenance tool that could double as a club. They reached the breach just as the machine forced its way inside. The thing was about the size of a large dog, with multiple limbs and sensors that glowed with cold blue light. It looked ancient and advanced at the same time, a contradiction of technology. It saw them and attacked. Victor met it with a roar, swinging his tool with devastating force. The blow sent the machine spinning, but it recovered instantly. It lashed out with one of its limbs, cutting Victor's arm. Blood floated in red droplets. Alina hit it from behind with the fire extinguisher. The impact dented its casing but did not stop it. The machine turned toward her, its sensors focusing on her face. For a moment, she felt like it was studying her, analyzing her, judging her. Then it spoke. The voice was metallic and strange, but the words were English. "You cannot succeed. You are too primitive. Submit and your death will be quick." Alina smiled despite her fear. "We are human. We do not submit." She hit it again, harder this time. Victor joined her, and together they pounded the machine until its systems failed. It collapsed into a twitching heap of metal and wire, and they shoved it out through the breach before sealing the hole. "That was too close," Victor said, clutching his wounded arm. "But we won," Alina replied. "Now let us finish this." They returned to their stations just as David made the final push into the calm center. The transition was sudden and shocking. One moment, they were surrounded by chaos. The next moment, they were floating in perfect stillness. The eye of the cosmic storm stretched around them, a sphere of peace in the midst of destruction. Alina looked at her battered crew and her damaged ship and felt a surge of hope. They had made it. Now came the hard part. The calm center of the storm was approximately 40 kilometers across, a bubble of stillness surrounded by walls of screaming energy. The Phoenix floated at the center of this bubble, damaged but still functioning. Around them, the cosmic storm continued its relentless march toward Earth. Alina checked the mission clock. 8 hours remained until the storm would reach their home planet. 8 hours to save civilization. 8 hours to prove that humanity deserved to survive. "Amara, status on the resonance shield," Alina called into the intercom. Amara's voice was tired but determined. "I have been working on it continuously. I can give you 75% power, maybe 80 if I push the systems beyond their limits. But Commander, there is a problem. The shield generator was designed to be deployed from a stationary position. If we activate it while inside the storm, we have no way to escape before the effects take hold." Alina understood what Amara was saying. The resonance shield would create a cascading reaction that would tear the storm apart from the inside. But the reaction would also destroy anything caught within its radius. The Phoenix would be vaporized along with the storm. "Is there any way to increase the delay? Give us time to get out." The original design had a 30-second delay before full activation. I might be able to extend it to 2 minutes. Maybe 3 if everything goes perfectly. But Commander, our engines are damaged. We are running at 60% thrust. Even with 3 minutes, I do not think we can escape the blast radius. The crew listened in silence. They had known from the beginning that this mission was dangerous. They had accepted the possibility that they might not come home, but facing that reality was different from accepting it as an abstract possibility. David was the first to speak. "What if we do not try to escape? What if we embrace the sacrifice?" Lisa shook her head. "There has to be another way. We did not come this far just to die." Victor was checking his damaged arm, which Lisa had bandaged during the flight through the storm. "In Russia, we have many stories of heroes who sacrificed themselves for the greater good. It is an honorable death." James, still weak from his injuries, spoke from the medical bay through the intercom. "The storm is not natural. It was created by an intelligence. If we destroy it, we send a message. We tell whoever made this thing that humanity will not be easily defeated. Our death would be a victory, not a defeat. Alina listened to her crew debating their fate. She felt the weight of command pressing down on her. Whatever decision she made would determine not just their lives but the future of Earth. "Everyone listen to me," she said finally. "We did not come here to die, we came here to save our planet, and I intend to do both." She moved to a console and began working. Her fingers flew across the keys as she accessed the ship systems. "Amara, I need you to answer some questions. Can the resonance shield be deployed without the Phoenix? Can we detach the generator and leave it behind?" There was a long pause. Then Amara's voice came back, tinged with hope. "The generator is modular. It was designed that way for maintenance purposes. Theoretically, we could detach it and place it at the center of the storm, but someone would have to stay behind to manually activate it. The remote triggers were damaged when we took that hit from the energy tendril." Alina nodded slowly. "Then someone stays behind." "Commander, no," David protested. "We can find another way." "There is no other way. The generator needs to be activated manually. Someone has to do it, and that someone is going to be me." The crew erupted in objections. Victor insisted that he should be the one to stay. David argued that they should draw lots. Lisa began calculating whether they could find a way to rig a delayed activation. James tried to think of technical solutions that would let them all escape. Alina silenced them with a raised hand. "I am the commander. This is my responsibility. I have lived a full life. I have accomplished everything I set out to do. Most of you have families waiting for you. David, your daughter needs her father. Amara, your mother needs her daughter. Victor, your father will want to hear your stories. Lisa, you have so much more healing to do. James, you discovered this threat, and you need to be there to help Earth prepare for whatever comes next." She looked at each of them in turn, her eyes filled with love and pride. "I am not afraid. This is what I was born for. My whole life has been leading to this moment. Let me have it." The silence stretched on. Then one by one, her crew nodded their acceptance. Tears floated in the zero gravity, tiny droplets of sorrow and gratitude. "How long do we have?" David asked, his voice barely a whisper. 3 hours to prepare. Then you fly out while I stay behind. You should clear the blast radius with about 30 minutes to spare. That will give you time to send a message to Earth, let them know the storm is gone." The next 3 hours were the longest of Alina's life. Amara worked frantically to detach the resonance shield generator and prepare it for manual activation. Victor and David helped move it to the ship's cargo bay, where it could be deployed into space. Lisa prepared a medical kit for the remaining crew and made sure Alina had everything she needed for her final hours. James analyzed the storm constantly, making sure there were no surprises waiting for them. Alina spent her time writing letters. She wrote to her sister, explaining what she had done and why. She wrote to her parents, who had passed away years ago, telling them she hoped she had made them proud. She wrote to every astronaut she had ever trained, encouraging them to continue exploring the stars. And she wrote a letter to humanity itself, a message to be broadcast to the world after her death. "Dear fellow humans," she wrote, "I am Commander Alina Vasquez. By the time you read this, I will be gone, but you will be alive. That is all that matters. I want you to know that I am not a hero. I am just a person who was in the right place at the right time with the right skills. Anyone would have done what I did. That is what makes humanity special. We take care of each other. We sacrifice for each other. We love each other. Never forget that. Never stop exploring. Never stop dreaming. And never ever give up. The universe is vast and full of wonders and dangers. But as long as we stand together, there is nothing we cannot overcome. Goodbye and good luck." When the time came, Alina hugged each of her crew members. David was crying openly, and she wiped his tears with her thumb. "Tell your daughter that her daddy helped save the world. Tell her to be brave just like you." Victor crushed her in a bear hug that almost broke her ribs. "You are the greatest commander I have ever served under. I will tell stories about you until the day I die." Lisa pressed a small medical kit into Alina's hands. "For the pain, so your last moments will be peaceful." Amara could barely speak through her sobs. "I rebuilt the generator. It will work. Your sacrifice will not be in vain." James, still weak from his injuries, grasped her hand. "I will study the signal I detected. I will find out who did this, and I will make sure humanity is ready for them." Alina nodded to each of them, memorizing their faces. Then she pushed herself toward the cargo bay, where the resonance shield generator waited. The Phoenix detached from the generator, leaving Alina floating alone in the calm center of the storm. She watched the ship accelerate away, its damaged engines straining to clear the blast radius. Around her, the storm walls churned with energy. She could feel the malevolent intelligence behind it, watching her, waiting to see what she would do. Alina smiled. "You made a mistake," she said out loud, even though no one could hear her. "You thought we would run, you thought we would surrender, you thought we were weak, but we are human, and humans never give up." She placed her hand on the activation switch. The generator hummed with power, ready to tear the storm apart from within. She thought about Earth. She thought about blue oceans and green forests and cities full of life. She thought about children playing in parks and couples holding hands and old people telling stories to young people. She thought about all the beauty and wonder and possibility that would be preserved by her sacrifice. Alina Vasquez pressed the switch. The resonance shield activated with a pulse of energy that expanded outward at the speed of light. It met the storm walls and began to tear them apart, unraveling the carefully constructed patterns that held the cosmic weapon together. The storm screamed, a sound that existed in frequencies beyond human hearing, but that Alina somehow felt in her bones. The last thing she saw was the storm dissolving around her, breaking into harmless particles that scattered into the void. The last thing she felt was peace. The last thing she thought was that it was worth it. On Earth, the sky cleared. People poured out of shelters and looked up at stars that had been hidden by fear. They laughed and cried and hugged each other. They did not yet know the full story of what had happened, but they knew they had been saved. The Phoenix emerged from the remains of the storm and began the long journey home. Inside, the crew sat in silence, honoring the memory of their commander. When they arrived at Earth 3 days later, they were greeted as heroes. But they always insisted that the real hero was Alina Vasquez, who had given everything so that humanity could live. In the years that followed, James Okonkwo led a team that decoded the signal Alina had detected. They discovered that the storm had been created by an ancient machine intelligence that existed beyond the edges of the galaxy. This intelligence viewed biological life as a threat and had been sending cosmic storms to sterilize planets for millions of years. Earth had been selected for destruction, but humanity's response had changed the equation. The machine intelligence sent no more storms to Earth. Whether it had decided that humans were too dangerous to attack or whether Alina's defiance had earned some form of respect, no one ever knew. But Earth was safe. David Park became the head of the United Nations Space Defense Force, dedicating his life to preparing humanity for future threats. His daughter grew up knowing that her father had helped save the world, and she followed in his footsteps, becoming an astronaut herself. Amara Osai won the Nobel Prize for Physics for her work on the resonance shield. She used the prize money to fund scholarships for young engineers from developing countries, creating a legacy that would benefit generations to come. Viktor Petrov returned to Russia and wrote a book about the mission that became an international bestseller. He never stopped telling stories about Commander Vasquez, and he never stopped drinking vodka in her honor. Lisa Montgomery established a foundation for astronaut mental health, recognizing that the psychological burden of space exploration was as important as the physical dangers. She helped countless spacefarers cope with trauma and loss. James Okonkwo continued to study the stars, always watching for new threats. He became the world's leading expert on cosmic defense and was consulted by governments around the planet. He never forgot the woman who had given her life so that he could continue his work. The Phoenix was preserved in a museum, its battle damage left untouched as a reminder of what humanity had endured and overcome. Millions of people visited it every year, and every visitor left with a renewed sense of pride in their species. And at the entrance to the museum, a statue of Elena Vasquez stood with her hand raised toward the stars. The inscription at its base read, "Here stands Commander Elena Vasquez, Earth's hero. She defied the cosmic storm. Her bravery preserved civilization against doom. She showed the universe what humans can achieve when they refuse to surrender. She is gone, but we remain because of her. May her sacrifice never be forgotten." The statue looked up at the night sky and the stars looked back. Somewhere among those stars, the machine intelligence watched and waited, but it did not attack again. Perhaps it had learned to fear humanity. Perhaps it had learned to respect them. Or perhaps it was simply curious to see what these strange, stubborn, magnificent creatures would do next. Whatever the reason, humanity had earned its place in the cosmos. And it was all because one woman had the courage to stand against the storm and say, "We do not submit." The future was uncertain. More challenges would come. More threats would emerge. But humanity would face them together, united by the memory of sacrifice and the promise of hope. Elena Vasquez had saved the world. And the world would never forget. On the anniversary of her sacrifice, people around the globe lit candles and looked up at the stars. They whispered her name like a prayer, and somewhere in the vast darkness of space, it seemed like the stars themselves were shining a little brighter. For Commander Elena Vasquez. For humanity. Forever.